This lecture will introduce you to the art of India before 1200 CE. The South Asian subcontinent, or the Indian subcontinent, is a peninsular region. It includes modern-day India, southeast Afghanistan, Pakistan, Nepal, Bangladesh, and Sri Lanka. These areas have been home to societies whose cultures are connected. They interact with each other, or they have interacted with each other, and they continue to interact with each other over the years. But they also have well-defined religions that lead to continuity in art or traditions in art. India and South Asia were linked to the rest of Asia and Europe through trade routes, both land and sea trade routes. Now, despite some cultural cohesion, these are very distinct regional areas. So they have distinct cultural differences. One of the main things that they have that's different from each other is differences in languages. Today, India recognizes some 18 official languages, and there are even more that are used, and even more that were used in the past. This region also varies in climate and terrain. So from place to place, wherever you are in this subcontinent, the climate and terrain changes. At the same time, often this area shares similar themes or subject matter. But within that subject matter or themes, they have these distinct differences illustrated by regional artistic traditions. Despite the diversity that we find in this area, there are several overarching traits that unite art of the Indian subcontinent. One is a distinct sense of beauty with voluptuous forms, abundant ornamentation, that means decoration, texture, and color. Now, visual abundance or ornamentation or decoration are considered to be auspicious. And auspicious is roughly translated to or understood as the promise of success, and also reflects a belief in the generosity and favor of the gods. Another thing this region has in common is an overarching symbolism or use of iconography. And finally, and perhaps the most important, the region has an emphasis on depicting the vibrant quality of a world scene as infused with the dynamics of the divine. So that means that you can see the work of the gods in everything, and this enhances life and enhances the vibrancy of life. The people of this region believe in a spiritual quality to the world. They believe that everything, humans, gods, and animals, are enhanced by the spiritual quality, and that this spiritual quality enhances their art making and makes it more vibrant and full of energy. The earliest of known civilizations in South Asia are the Indus Valley Civilization. Today it's in present-day Pakistan, which is northwest of India, along the Indus River. It flourished from about 3000 to 1750 BCE. So just to give you some timeline context, it's contemporary to the Old Kingdom of Egypt, the Minoan civilization of the Aegean, which we haven't yet talked about in this class, the dynasties of Ur, and Babylon in Mesopotamia. Along with Egypt and Mesopotamia, the Indus Valley Civilization is considered to be one of the world's earliest urban river valley civilizations. Now, we don't really know a lot about the Indus Valley Civilization. We do know that they had cities. They had Mohenjo-Daro, which was built sometime between 2500 and 2000 BCE, and it held between 20,000 and 50,000 people, which is a lot for that time. We also know that there was some sort of relationship or cultural continuity between these early Indus Valley civilizations and later cultures. One of the earliest art forms that we see in this region are seal impressions. So basically they are imprints made by a seal or a stamp, carved from stone and coated with a material, an alkali, that turns white when fired. They have a little knob on the back of each of them. They may have been like suspended on a necklace or something like that. The ones that we're looking at here were discovered by chance in the late 19th century. These imprints provide clues as to what ancient civilization was like in this region. More than 2,000 small seals and seal impressions have been recovered. The subject matter is usually animals, some animals standing before an altar, which we can see like up here or over here. And some of them are a little bit more naturalistic and some of them are highly stylized. It just sort of depends. But they do have well-modeled surfaces implying dimension. They were probably used for sealing packets. They also express a pictographic script, which has not yet been deciphered, but you can see that right here and over here as well. This seal on the left is Seal E. It depicts a human in a meditative posture. In later Indian culture, this posture is associated with a yogi, a person who seeks mental and physical purification and self-control through meditation. Usually it's used for spiritual purposes. So this is kind of interesting. It's like a continued tradition, a continuing motif. So I don't know if you can make it out, but here's the head and the arms, and then here they're kind of in this cross-legged position. Here's another stamp that shows us, or stamp impression that shows us a horned bovine or water buffalo at an altar-like structure. A humped bull is critical to the symbolism of Shiva or Shiva, and it represents fertility, power, and procreation. So Shiva or Shiva is one of the gods of Hinduism, and so he is associated with fertility, power, and procreation. Similar motifs on seals and a few artworks from the Indus Valley Civilization will show up later in other South Asian cultures. The cities of the Indus Valley Civilization declined between 2000 and 1750 BCE. We are not sure why, perhaps due to climate changes, maybe natural disasters, or invasions. But replacing these cities, we see rural societies evolving in this area. Likely people who originally lived in these cities kind of moved out to the countryside. The next period that we talk about in this region is the Vedic period. It lasted from 1750 to 322 BCE. About 1750 BCE, nomadic shepherd Aryans entered India from Central Asia and Russia. As far as we can tell, there was no sense of invasion or conquest. It was just a migration. They introduced bronze weapons, horse and chariots, the Sanskrit language, a hierarchical or a social order, and religious practices centered on the appeasement of gods through fire sacrifice. This period is called the Vedic period because the Aryans had these sacred writings, and these writings were known as the Vedas. Originally, they were hymns to the divine king Indra. Their class structure, the class structure that they brought with them, was really the most influential on the region. It became hereditary, and you couldn't move between classes despite your wealth during your lifetime. And it does still endure in Indian society today. Also during the Vedic period, 3 of the 4 major enduring religions of India emerge, and they are Hinduism, Buddhism, and Jainism. So I'm going to give you a little bit of an introduction to Buddhism. And like when I talk about any religion in this class, this is a very brief summary of the religion. We're not getting into depth of it at all. All the religions we talk about in this class are way more complicated than how we talk about them in this class. Also, this is not a religion class, so I'm not trying to teach you this religion. I'm just trying to teach you enough so we can kind of get a basis to talk about the art, because religion is important to art, especially in these cultures. Okay, so the first culture we're going to talk, or the first religion we're going to talk about is Buddhism. The origins of Buddhism were derived from the teachings of the Buddha, and the Buddha was a prince named Siddhartha Gautama, and he lived from about 563 to 483 BCE. Today, Buddhism is popular in regions of Nepal and central India. Siddhartha, the Buddha, was born as a prince. At his birth, it had been foretold that he would either be this great world conqueror or a fully enlightened being. His father, the king, obviously wanted him to be this great world conqueror. He was interested in power. So he surrounded his son with riches, pleasure, and no pain. But one day, Siddhartha left the palace, and he encountered old age, pain, sickness, and death. He became very troubled by the human condition. Imagine never seeing these things before in your life. And then to be just, everything seems perfect. You see all these young people, they're healthy, they're happy, and then you see the realities of the world. Imagine how much that would have impacted you and moved you. So he became troubled by the human condition, and he decided to leave the palace for good. He abandoned his family. At that point, he was married, and I think he had children as well. He abandoned his wealth and his inheritance to the throne, and he went to live as a hermit in the wilderness. After 6 years of meditation, he attained complete enlightenment and became a Buddha. He gave his first teachings in Sarnath, which is northeast India, on the Ganges River. And he founded Buddhism on these 4 noble truths. 1, life is suffering. 2, the suffering is caused by ignorance. 3, ignorance can be overcome and extinguished. 4, the way to overcome ignorance is by following the Eightfold Path. The Eightfold Path is the right view, the right resolve, the right speech, the right action, the right livelihood, the right effort, the right mindfulness, and the right concentration. Now, after Siddhartha's death, his disciples developed his teachings and established monastic institutions. And these are actually like the oldest monastic institutions in the world. So like monks, that is their monastic orders. But the Buddhist monks are actually the oldest tradition in the world. Now, a couple things to remember when we talk about Buddhism. First of all, Buddha is not considered a god. He is one who sees the ultimate nature of the world and is no longer subject to samsara. And samsara is the cycle of death and rebirth. So people in this region believe that life is cylindrical. So you live, you die, you're reborn. You live, you die, you're reborn. But after you obtain enlightenment and become a Buddha, you don't have to be reborn anymore. Bodhisattvas are figures whose souls are wisdom. But these saintly beings decide, they're actually like on the brink of becoming a Buddha, but they decide to remain and continue the cycle of death and rebirth so that they can help other people achieve enlightenment and become Buddhas themselves. So they really are like these wonderful kind of teacher saint figures. In art, Bodhisattvas wear princely outfits, where Buddhas wear very plain monk robes. Now, in Hinduism, which we'll talk about later, a deity may dwell in its image. So like we have like a statue of like Shiva or somebody. The deity can actually embody that image and come down and watch you worshiping him. But you can't do that in Buddhism. In Buddhism, depictions of the Buddha and Bodhisattva are only symbolic, and there's no spirit that resides within the art.